customers' behaviors have been changing. Well, these companies have had to adapt and adjust. And it's not always that easy to make those changes because, as we'll see today, the changes go deep. It's not just about changing the technology. It's not always about just changing the processes. But I would posit that it's really sometimes an identity change. So we're going to be talking about the challenges that incumbents are facing in reinventing themselves. So for that, I would like to welcome our next two speakers on stage. Please help me welcome Andrea Cates, Managing Director at Future Proofing Next, who is joining us all the way from San Francisco. Very early for you. Welcome, Andrea.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. And let's welcome on stage as well Ashok Kalyaswamy, Chief Information Officer at Saxo Bank. Ashok, it's great to have you with us today, all the way from India.
Yes, I'm within the Delhi office, taking a break from Copenhagen.
Great. So we have the broadest geographical spread in this session today. Anyway, so let's just get started. And for that, we have a poll. So we want to just ask the audience, tell us, where are you most stuck in your transformation as incumbent company? So we have here some options. Is it technology that represents the biggest challenge for you? Is it processes? Could it be maybe people inside the company? This could be things like culture, mindset, leadership. Or is it customer traction? Are you finding it difficult to get your value proposition out to customers and for customers to adopt it? Or is it a matter of future direction? Are we finding it difficult to understand which direction we should take just because we don't know where the future is going to lead us? So I can see already that some answers are coming in. Very interesting. Right, so we seem to have a tie between technology and processes. People seems to be taking most of the votes here, 55%. Customer traction, right? And I think this probably confirms some of the suspicions that we have with regards to some of the main challenges about reinventing incumbent organizations. All right, I can see this is really cool because dynamically we see that even spread between technology, processes, and customer traction. No one seems to find future direction as a problem, but I think we have people as the one that's ahead, and we'll see if that changes throughout our discussion today. So, with that, let's just start talking about, in your opinion, both Andrea and Ashok, why is it that the digital transformation gets so difficult? What's happening with incumbents? Why is it that so many incumbents fail in their efforts to transform their organizations?
Okay, so I think the people picked the right percentage in terms of people, culture, and leadership. So first of all, digital transformation is less about digital and less about technology, but it's a change management exercise. And it could be technology, it could be process, or what have you. And people underestimate or completely don't understand what change management means. And that's the crux of it. Technology, if you're talking about digital transformation, is kind of well defined, and most people know what to do, and technology moves at a rapid rate. But what do you mean by change management, right? Is first of all, what are the key things one has to do is articulate the why. Is why, what are you trying to solve for, and why are you doing what you're doing from a digital perspective? What are the benefits to the company? And then really, this has to be taken at a deep level. So there's an assumption, if you haven't already got it, that you have to have unilateral support from your stakeholders, your board members, or what have you, that A, it's important. And you have to articulate the business case and what are the financial benefits. Then you have to articulate what it means to every single person, every single team, so that it's not just about, hey, what's necessary for the company, which in turn is what's necessary for the customers, but what does it actually mean to them and between teams, or what are the ways of working, right? To get the emotional buy-in, as opposed to, hey, here's a PowerPoint exercise, this is what you have to do, just go do it. And that's a failure. So once you articulate what it means, then you have to win the hearts and mind of the people that this is the right thing to do, what it means to them, what behaviors need to change, and what are the ways of working, because many things, the ways of working will have to change, right? So if you talk, and there are many ways to look at it. So if you take a customer-centric view, which is arguably the first thing one should do, what are the touch points of the customer with your company or product? Okay, you have to map the whole thing. And then once you take the touch point, in our case, it could be trading, it could be investing, it's onboarding, it's payments, it's end of day, what have you. You have to then take the customer journey from a customer's lens all the way through your firm and see, okay, what exactly how do you make the journey smooth and seamless? And there is a technology aspect of what needs to be done to make it super user-friendly and useful, but also the people who are working to solve those issues. If you take one particular touch point, when it's simple, you're just onboarding a customer, right? So there are different parts of your organization who need to work together in virtual teams in one seamless way, right? To adopt either digital technologies or use new technologies, new ways of working, to really come together with purpose to say, this is what I'm going to make better for the customer. These are the tools. And from a technology foundation perspective, of course, you need a scalable platform, cloud, so that, and we can go a lot into tech. But that's the kind of approach one has to take. And we could go on and on, but really, in a sense, it's focusing on culture, ways of working, and really taking a lot of time in change management. So that's, before I get rambling too much, Andrea.
So I loved what you said about hearts and minds. I think that the key that most people forget is that you can intellectually want to do this, but your willingness, your capacity, your intent won't be matched by your confidence in yourself that you can really do this. And I'll give an example. So 15 years ago, when Fintech was really kind of in its infancy, I was working with the CEO of a large insurance company. And, the team really knew that change was coming. Everybody was talking about, even in those days, it wasn't cryptocurrency and blockchain and the things we're talking about now, but everyone knew that change was coming, and that, as Ashok said, that the customer requirements, that what the customer was looking for was something like Amazon or Zappos could provide, right? Like this immediacy, this really terrific digital experience that was seamless. And at the time, insurance companies were like, we've got agents, we've got the market, we've got the customers, we've got it wrapped up. We don't need to change. But in their hearts, they knew that they needed to. And at the time, it was really interesting because it was like this huge tension between the we must and we're afraid. We must, we're afraid. We must, we're afraid. And we had this phrase that we kept saying. We said, should we catch up or should we just give up? Right? Like you have a choice. You see all this technology and it can be very intimidating. But I think, to Ashok's point, if you start with the fact that belief is there, we must do this. We owe it to our customers. They expect us to be as responsive as Zappos and as customer friendly as Amazon was at the time. They expect us to adapt our business models to really suit what they're looking for. If you get that mindset and you look sort of across industries, not at other fintechs and not at other insurance companies, but at like the best in breed from another field, you've got the ability to do the kind of learning that you need to get your heart and your mind to come together and actually activate it. And I think to me, that's the biggest thing, is to really say, we can catch up and we don't have to give up.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we say that we need to start with a why. And I think as transformations have been tried and failed, this has become like a realization that a lot of companies now have. And presumably the why comes from the customer. Would you agree to that that's what's driving the why or the new why?
I say no.
Yeah,
I'll be controversial. It's the old line that if you ask the customers what they want, and you're working for car company in this early 1900s, they'll say a faster horse. We know this, right? So I think that that's part of it. I honestly think that that's part of it. And I've worked with, oh gosh, I was trying to count it. I think 75 incumbents that we're trying to get into a digital transformation, which is, a fair number of initiatives. And yeah, of course, the customers are there, but the mindset inside the four walls about what the customers want is very different from the ability to discern kind of an unmet need that a lot of times the customers can't even articulate, right? Mm-hmm. So what customers usually want is something that doesn't exist, right? Like, I wish I could have. And they piece together, as I said, the responsiveness of Zappos with the friendliness of, their local grocery store, with the trust that they have in their best friend, but then you look at a bank and it's like, do I trust them the way I trust my best friend? So they give up on that idea. And I think that if you keep asking customers in the old-fashioned market research way, you're never really going to get what the customers truly want, which is an unarticulated opportunity.
I think there are a couple of things. The customer's experience of incumbents is what they expect in retail, like the experience with Apple or this product. They expect the same kind of smooth, outstanding user experience of banks or whatever incumbent is, right? And one has to have that perspective. In order to meet it, though, you have to look inside your four walls and say, okay, if this is what the customer needs, what do we have to do internally to make that happen, right? And that's where it comes is that's where maybe technology comes in, where processes comes in, is the how, and the many aspects of technology and processes which have to be completely looked at and revamped. Otherwise, what happens is so simple things could take a lot of time and have a terrible user experience. So you have to map the user journey and make it frictionless. The second aspect of that is scaling. So it's one thing to handle a small handful of clients. Suddenly, does it scale to 600,000, a million clients? Then what? Are you going to be hiring a lot of people? You have to look at digitization of not just the endpoint of the customer touch point, but internally so that you can scale. Because, hey, when there are only 10 clients logging into your platform, the experience could be great. Suddenly if there's 600,000 people logging in during a peak market volatility, the customer experience, shall we just say politely, degrades. It's not going to be a fun experience and they're going to go somewhere else, right? So, but they won't know about it. People internally need to understand what the bottlenecks are and find solutions for that, whether it's in processes or in technology.
So I have one quick add, which is, I worked with a large, I think the second largest trust bank in Japan, and there was a project on the unbanked, right? And we were trying to use cryptocurrency or blockchain to address this. Well, the unbanked, it turns out, you can't just keep giving the same messages and products to the unbanked that you do to the banked. It's a myth. And if you keep asking the customers over and over, like these were millennials who were, wealthy and were not banking their money with a bank. They were putting it literally under their mattresses. And so you couldn't just keep asking them, well, don't you want this checking account? Don't you want this online service? Don't you want this app? Because the answer was no. And so I think that the mindset as the technology evolves, I look at Lunar and Astralis, it's like, well, what are gamers doing naturally? What are gamers doing naturally in their natural loyalty to something? And let's tap into that, the gaming loyalty, and apply that to a fintech mindset and start with that. And that's a big idea in terms of uncovering what I call an untapped customer market.
And I think this is a good point to maybe take a question, Andrea, because this is a question addressed directly to you. And he says, it's from Matt, and he says, how do you identify the unarticulated needs of customers?
Well, brilliant. Well, first of all, read my book, Find Your Next. and we work with a process called Get to Next. And it's about uncovering untapped opportunities. And it's an easy thing to start. And actually, I'm doing a session on it today with a client. So you start with other industries. My favorite comment that I used was, "Don't be the fastest snail in the snail race." And I actually learned it from someone at Copenhagen Fintech. So if you're only looking at your own industry and your own customers in a limited way, you'll never find an untapped need. What you need to do is look in another industry at your customers. What is the level of expectation that a customer has that's your customer? As I mentioned before, in a gaming industry, they expect to be kind of entertained. They expect to be reminded. They need some push messaging. They need community. Well, none of those things happen in your bank, but they definitely happen where the customer exists before and after their transaction with your bank or your insurance company or your payments company. So the first thing to do is look at what your current customers are doing in other aspects of their life with other vendors and other brands. And the second thing is, and I've done this not in a fintech, but in a mobility, where we were trying to discern what it would take for there to be trust in an app. And you can't ask someone, you have to watch their behaviors. And so a lot of the A/B testing and the piloting is around a hypothesis that you have. Like, I wonder if we put this particular opportunity in front of the customers, you watch their behavior, not what they say they would do, but what they're actually doing in the wild.
I think that's super interesting. Maybe I'd like to just now gear the discussion a little bit towards, okay, so I think we agree that we need to start with the why. We agree that this is a change management exercise where the people component is perhaps the most important one. Why is it then that so many companies that embark in transformations start with the technology or the processes and only think about the why halfway through it?
I'm going to start. I'm going to start on this one. I'm going to give Ashoka a hard time. Well, a lot of times it's funded through the technology group. And so if you give a technology expert a technology problem, the answer will be technology. That's just the way it goes. I've joked about this many times. And also I call technology people, and I ran a software company, so I'm just as guilty of this, but my DevOps team always thought that it was more lines of code that was the answer. Always. They never thought it was the customer experience. They never thought that maybe it was, something different. So I think that's the way that I was guilty when I ran the software company was we always thought that the next answer was from learning more code. Now everything is machine learning. If you don't use the word machine learning at least once in a sentence, you can't get funding. So, so we go for these things, AI, machine learning, blockchain. But at the end of the day, what's really important is what McDonald's calls the dumpster test, which is how many hamburgers do people take one bite and throw in the dumpster? And I think we need a dumpster test in digital transformation to see, oh, they love it. They took the freemium model. That's fantastic. Nobody did the paid model. That's a big warning sign. But I think that it starts with the fact that we have happy ears because we think because they bought the hamburger, we've succeeded. Okay, Ashok, take me on.
Over to you, Ashok.
Well, what? It starts with IT. What? An IT can't think customer-centric. What? Stop it already. But no, that may be a generalization, but definitely not our bank, because like we all sit at the executive team, we decide the strategy. We are highly customer-centric, and there is no big division between technology and, we are all one integrated thing. And if you ask why people don't think of the why, I don't know, right? I think is the first answer is, and this could be digital transformation, it could be sending a man to the moon. You have to articulate the business value of doing anything. It's as simple as that. I don't know. You want to go to a new country, forget about digital transformation. You as a company want to move to a new country. Okay. What is the first thing you're going to ask, right? What's it going to cost? What's my revenue? The same thing where you're doing digital transformation. The fact it's digital and there's a technical word on it is almost like a sidebar. The question is, it should be a business question. What's it going to cost? Why am I doing it? What's going to be the impact on NPS, customer satisfaction, TRE? You answer all of this question, it has to be led top down. The mandate has to come top down. So if somebody is not doing it, then somebody who's running the firm doesn't understand or the value of doing digital transformation, the business case of doing digital transformation. The idea could come bottoms up because maybe tech people are smarter, but and they see the friction and the problems. But to avoid failure, the mandate has to come from the top. The business value has to be articulated. Then the whole organization needs to come together. And the second part of it is prioritization, because you can't stop still, at least in an incumbent bank. You have to pay the bills. Your business has to move on. You have an existing customer base. You cannot stop everything and say, oh, I'm going to do the digital transformation and show up after 3 years. So this has to be like changing the wheels of a car while you're driving it. And you can come up with another favorite analogy. It requires a careful planning exercise where this has to happen side by side by keeping the existing business running, paying the bills, adding new products, getting new customers. And that requires an exercise in project management and planning where you get small wins. Let's assume you've done the culture, you've done from an execution perspective, you get small wins, and the work to be in this transformation has to be baked in with keeping the rest of the business running, or or you'll have a great digital platform 3 years and no customers because you haven't kept the existing business running.
All right,
so I'll jump in really fast and just say, yeah, super fast to just say, Saxo Bank is so visionary, and I'm not saying that to just kiss up to Ashok, which would not be a bad thing, but Saxo Bank is very visionary. And so one of the things that I do, because we have this process called Get to Next, we literally put one chair extra in the room that's for the future customer. And as we're discussing inside the four walls, we put literally a chair there so that we're reminded of the fact that, our why has got to be a future customer. What is it? How would they respond to what we're talking about? And that symbolism of making sure that we bake that into our processes lets a lot of us be as visionary as Saxo Bank is, to be frank.
All right, perfect. So that's a good segue to my next question. Andrew, this is for you. So we often hear that culture is the most difficult part to change and transform in a company. What would you say is the key thing that organizations need to focus on when trying to reinvent their culture?
To me, the most important thing is something that's called adaptive intelligence. And it's the ability, adaptive intelligence.
Yeah, tell us what that means.
And so what that means is that you have a type of person who is comfortable with ambiguity, who is responsive to change as it happens, who approaches the new with a sense of competence and a sense of possibility, and that they're comfortable with that. Because people who are and I was trained with certainty. I was trained to look at models that were perfect, and you got better grades if you could predict with certainty. And in the speed of today's market, adaptive intelligence is a new term that they use. I don't know if they use it everywhere, but in San Francisco, we use it a lot, because it has to do with the ability for leaders to help their teams not be punished for getting it wrong, but be rewarded for learning it better and faster. And so I talk about a state of perpetual refresh, where we're always curious. As leaders, we reinforce constantly. They talk about psychological safety, an Amy Edmondson term. But I also think that leaders need to be very proactive in encouraging structurally curiosity. Here's an example. When a prediction doesn't come out the way that you think, you don't punish people. Instead, you learn it quickly and say, how can we see the next thing that's coming around the corner? What might that look like? And I'm glad that people said future in the last poll, because we can really discern what's going to happen in the next 6 to 18 months. It's usually looking to other industries for signals. But to me, the leaders should be not as concerned with last year's quarterly earnings reports, but with emergence? What is emerging? What are we seeing as early signs that customers are on the cusp, on the edge of wanting or accepting something new? I'll give an example. When I was in China last year, QR codes, I mean, you couldn't pay with a credit card. I'm an American, right? Like, good luck having a credit card. It was crazy. And, it was just so much a part of the culture. And so to me, it's possible for leaders to get people to be very responsive in the way that we lead. So I would say number one is the ability to encourage adaptive intelligence, responsiveness. Number two, to embrace perpetual refresh, to create learning within the organization and curiosity in every single meeting. The leaders need to ask great questions and listen really well.
And
Ashok, I see you nodding in agreement. Tell us your view on this.
yeah, because she hit the nail on the head when she talked about China, because there are some countries like China, right? What they did was they were behind in a few other things, but then instead of just trying to play catch up, they tried to understand, they listened, they observed, they understood really what the customers' needs were, and just went to mobile first, because hey, people are using WhatsApp and WeChat. You have company websites on WeChat. You can pay through your mobile phone. So they leapfrogged a whole bunch of in-between technology and just skip to what's next. And that's a pretty creative mindset, right? So I think the key thing is not to be bounded by what we know. Yes, and really thinking of the art of the possible, because technology is evolving, and not try to play catch up, but have an open mind and think outside the box, because technology is evolving at an exponential pace. And if you know what tech can do for you, there could be completely new and creative ways to solve a customer's problem, assuming you're listening to what the customer problem is to begin with, and not be boxed in to what you read in in journals and research articles, but to be really and truly creative. And I think that's where the fintechs come in. And the advice to fintechs out here is, where possible, think outside the box. Understand where the friction is, where there are too many middlemen, where it's too expensive, too difficult, and how can you do to circumvent that to get value faster.
All right, I want to ask a provocative question here. And specifically when it comes to the leadership team, to the management team. Can adaptive intelligence be learned? Is that something that you can develop?
Andrea.
Okay. I say yes. I'm a big believer actually in incumbents and in the ability for incumbents to win. I also am a big believer in the fact that, there's going to be pushback from startups for sure, and it keeps everyone on our toes. And I believe, because I've seen it, I mean, the leaders that I work with and the teams I work with are people who came from a mindset of being able to kind of an assembly line mindset. But once they realized that the world was not assembly lines anymore, like it's kind of like cars and mobility. Can a person who's an engineer for a car become a mobility expert? Absolutely. But they have to have hunger for LiDAR. They have to have hunger for understanding, kit of parts. They have to have hunger for understanding a customer experience that's more about point-to-point transportation versus I own a car. So I believe it's what Ashok said before. Mindset first. Can mindset be learned? Yes. Change your mind and your behavior, and your teams will follow. Change your mind first. And it's, to me, amazing. It has nothing to do with Gen Z. It has nothing to do with millennials. It has nothing to do with age. To me, it has to do with this, as Ashok said, this possibility mindset and the insistence, the absolute insistence that you can't survive with today's mindset. There's no way. And so you have to be very hungry to learn something new. I would say bring your 6-year-old to work, have them bring their iPad with them, and then you'll be great. You'll be so adaptive because you'll understand how fast technology has changed.
Yeah,
Ashok, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Chris, and I totally agree. And it's got to do with leadership and mindset. And once in a while, you come across some interesting reading. And there's a book we are given out to everybody at Saxo, and it's called Mindset by Carol Dweck, which really explains what a fixed mindset is, what a growth mindset is, and if you have a growth mindset, everything is possible.
Agree. That's a great book. Well, I think we're nearly at the end of our session, so I'm just going to give you 1 minute each just to do some closing statements or anything you want to leave the audience with. Let's start with you, Ashok.
Again, in terms of reinvention, I'm going to start with what we ended with. It's mindset. It's having an open mind. It's having a growth mindset. And in the end, if you are in any incumbent company and are trying to transform yourself, pay a lot of attention to change management, people, culture, change mindsets, behaviors will follow, and then success follows after that.
Thank you, Ashok. And Andrea?
I have 4 words. See differently, see outside your 4 walls. Learn like a hungry child. Learn in peers. Decide. If you have a lot of priorities and you know that there's an absolute imperative, you need to decide that you're going to do it, and commit. And that to me is what Ashok said about hearts and minds. Commit is different from no, you should. Commit is different from hire a bunch of consultants like me, to put a brilliant idea on a shelf and make a shrink wrap of it, right? Commit is your child is inside a building and the building catches fire. You're not thinking, I wonder if I should go in and, save that child. Commit is like, I'm going in. And that, whatever it takes for an introvert, for an extrovert, for an actuary, for an algorithm person, for an extrovert, whatever, that sense of we must has got to come from your heart and your mind. And then the technology will follow.
And with that, we're going to close this session. Thank you both so much. I think we have so much more to talk about this. I hope we can do this again some other time.